You're listening to the Banrion Show. It's 8 in the evening. Tune in every night at 8 to listen to the Banrion Show on Irish News Radio or ITV.ie. And you can contact anything that you've heard or if anything you'd like to discuss at news@irishnews.net. We haven't talked to Paul from Britain First for quite a while, so we're going to catch up to what's been going on and what he's been doing in all the news. To find out what exactly he's been doing. Welcome, Paul. Great to hear from you again. I haven't heard from you for a while now. So what's been happening?
Oh, a lot has been happening. It's great to be back on the show.
Thank you.
We've had a very quiet Christmas and New Year period, but we've started 2009 with relentless activities around the country. We held a day of action in Northern Ireland and against a mega mosque in Worcester on Saturday. And the pace of activities is going to be relentless this year. And I'm really looking forward to it. We've got a trial. We're on trial for so-called hate speech in, when is it? The 13th and 14th February in Belfast. And once we've overcome that, we've got a clear run. And we've got the elections coming up on May the 2nd, local elections around England and Northern Ireland. And we intend to stand candidates and contest seats around the country. So everything is just very, very busy at the moment. And surveying the scene, there's not really anything happening apart from Britian First out on the streets. There's not much happening. I mean, the Yellow Vests are quite active. Essentially, they're a kind of neutral movement. But in terms of patriotic right-wing politics in the UK, I think it's only Britain First that's really active.
And Jayda, Fransen, she's left. I just saw an email from her to say that she was leaving. She didn't say what she was. Just big things are happening. What's the story with that?
Jayda's contributed heavily to Britain First over the years. We both went to prison last March, and Jayda had a 9-month ordeal. She was in prison for 4.5 months, and then she was in a bail hospital for 4.5 months. And the first day I spoke to her back in November, she informed me that she wanted to do her own thing in the future, and I agreed to help her. So there's no acrimony, there's no ill feeling. It's very much a friendly and amicable divorce. But essentially, she just wants to do her own thing. She wants to run her own campaigns, and she wants to build up her own kind of operation. So, God bless her, and good luck to her.
Fantastic. And she's going down a political line, or she's just doing something completely different, or?
No, she wants to run her own campaigns, and she wants to produce her own videos on certain issues. I don't think she's interested in, building up her own movement or political party or anything like that. I think she wants to do kind of victims campaigning and that kind of stuff. So, we wish her all the best of luck.
Fantastic.
And we thank her for her contribution over the years. And Britain First is very much booming and growing, and we're the only ones really active on the streets of Britain on the patriotic right of politics. And we do intend to sweep into politics, start contesting elections left, right and centre. We've got a brilliant team. We held a leadership meeting on Saturday. About 15 of us in a room, and it was brilliant. The quality of the people we've got coming on board now, the intellect is brilliant. It's just it's transforming the organisation, and we're growing. We're highly active, and that's the way it's going to be.
So you're going to go for local elections. You're going to start putting your name into local elections.
We're going to start putting our name, throwing our hat into local elections. The Mayor of London elections, the Assembly elections.
Fantastic, yeah.
All the elections that come up every year, Britain First is going to become a serious political force in this country, because essentially UKIP are essentially a spent force. Any other kind of incarnation in this country isn't really going anywhere, isn't doing anything, isn't attracting attention. And I think now Nigel Farage wants to he started up a new party called the BRexit Party. But sooner or later, this Brexit issue is going to be resolved. And once it is, Britain First is going to be the only repository for patriotic votes, people who are fed up with what's happening to this country. And we intend to maximise on that.
And what do you think about the Brexit of all that's happening and the Northern Irish situation? Because I don't know whether you've seen with the Irish government they've been literally doing massive amount of scare tactics.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, like it's gone to a crazy, insane level because they're now threatening Irish people in the UK and English people in Ireland, saying, you know, they won't have freedom of movement, which is complete blatant lies, because that movement, freedom of movement, was an agreement with the British and the Irish from 1922. It has nothing to do with the EU or the EEC, because the Irish and the British relationship happened way before that. We have like a long list of connections way before the EU or EEC, but the Irish government is using people's ignorance to scare tactics, which is quite ridiculous what's going on at the moment. Really, really crazy. And even people with license are told now you need a green card to go up to Northern Ireland. Like, it's complete insane scare tactics.
Complete nonsense.
Put pressure on Irish living in United Kingdom or English living in Ireland to put pressure on the English government to, I don't know, break the deal or whatever.
Of course, it was the greatest democratic vote in British history, and it didn't go the way the establishment wanted. So all of the leading figures of the establishment in Westminster are just working round the clock on behalf of their EU masters to try and sabotage Brexit, or to make it. I mean, you can see what they're doing. They're trying to make it so painful and so chaotic and such a farce that people switch back to Remain. But I don't see any evidence of that happening, but that's essentially what they're trying to do. They're trying to either get it cancelled or scrapped, a second referendum. They're just desperately trying to cling on to the left-wing socialist superstate in Brussels. And they're trying to overturn the greatest democratic mandate in British history.
Yeah.
And obviously, the government in Dublin and in Westminster are both working in cahoots. It all makes sense, essentially. If you just look at the situation as though Theresa May was a Remainer and she serves Brussels, she doesn't serve British people, she serves the socialist superstate, the federal superstate in Brussels. If you look at it on that kind of basis, everything makes sense. That's
Absolutely.
why, starting with the Chequers arrangement, she is trying to keep regulatory and legislative, what's the word? We're trying to keep the laws and the regulations on both sides of the channel, the EU and the United Kingdom, the same. Because then essentially in 10 years' time, or when they get a new government, they can announce a new referendum and we can go back into the EU without any hassle, because the regulations and the rules are still the same. That's why they're terrified of a no-deal Brexit, because a no-deal Brexit will change fundamentally the laws, the structures and the regulations on both sides of the channel. And that means we can't go back in without a major headache. But the one thing out the Chequers deal, the famous Chequers deal that was 6 months ago or so, Theresa May said we need a common rule book, and that's the key. They're trying to keep the rules and regulations the same within the EU and the United Kingdom. They're trying to make us rule takers of what comes out of Brussels, so that if we go back into the EU, we can just slide back into it with no problems.
Yeah.
That is essentially the great plan.
Well, yeah.
So they're trying to. The short-term plan is to try and make it as painful as possible so that people end up scrapping it, or the government can scrap it. And they're basically essentially trying to sabotage it now. But if it does go ahead, keep the regulations and the rules the same in the EU and the UK so that we can slide back into it with fuss in the future.
Yeah. I mean, even the fact that she signed into the EU army, I thought was quite telling, really, because that's, really holding you in certain points. And then this whole, bullshit about the Northern Ireland, about leaving them in. So it was like a land grab, and that's pretty much basically what it is. She was just handing Northern Ireland over to the EU. And a lot of people, out of ignorance, particularly like in this country and in Europe, don't understand that the EU is a union, just like the UK, and that there is, like, people will go on about the independence of Ireland and all that sort of stuff, and that was one of the reasons why, they want the 32. But the 32 under what? Under the EU. That's not independence.
It's ludicrous, yeah. It's the same also in Scotland. They talk about independence all the time. But essentially they won't be independent because they'll be dominated. The sovereignty over Scotland, essentially, the highest level will be controlled by the EU Commission, and that will be the same in Ireland. I don't understand how people such as Sinn Féin, etc., whose avowed aim is to create a united Ireland and Irish independence and self-government and so on and so forth.
But they're not.
They're all pro-EU. It just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
It's contradictory.
Because since the last few years, they're fake. They're completely, what they are is Sorrow's Spain. They are completely fake. They're not for independence. They're not for sovereignty. They're completely the opposite. In fact, they don't even say they're a national party anymore. They're completely the opposite. They are a Sorrow Spain. That's what they are. They're for Sorrows. And they work completely on culture Marxism. They are not for an independent. They don't want independence. In fact, they kind of vote against that, not just for Northern Ireland, but even in the Republic, the so-called Republic, which is not really the Republic anymore, because we're stuck into the EU with complete treacherous governments that all should be shot. They're absolutely, none of them have a mandate to be even in the position that they're in. It's absolutely a fake government. It's completely corrupt. It's all globalist. It's a disaster, complete disaster.
I think all this nonsense about the Irish backstop, it's essentially a trap that the EU are laying to try and, if Theresa May would have got her deal through, she would have paid them £39 billion, and then she would have said, can we have a free trade agreement? And they would have just said no. And at that point, then we would have slid into the backstop, which is the UK stays in the customs union, or the single market, or one of the two, and that keeps us locked into the EU until a future British government takes us back in. It's all about keeping the rules and regulations the same on both sides of the channel so that we can just go back into the EU and no more fuss. The Irish backstop, all this fuss about, no one wants no one wants a hard border from Northern Ireland and the Republic. It's just not going to happen. It's pure scare tactics, scaremongering.
And they're using people's ignorance on Northern Ireland or the Republic as well to scare people. Like, there's letters going out to people, about you'll have to have a visa to go to Northern Ireland. Just complete scare tactics, because a lot of people don't know the history and they don't understand.
And it's just relentless. It's absolutely relentless. There were some dissidents let off a bomb in Londonderry on, I think it was Saturday night, I believe it was, and the bomb went off, and straight away the British media was saying this is one of the consequences of Brexit. Oh. This is going to lead to violence in Northern Ireland. It's just absolute nonsense.
Absolutely. They'll use anything. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually the governments themselves setting this up, because they want to hold Britain into this EU bullshit, because it's a globalist mess to break down each and every country and their identity and their culture and everything about it, and the UN. So Theresa May, after, same as our government, signed the UN Pact without even a notice to the people that mass migration will be a thing that's happening, even though the main people who voted for Brexit was to stop mass migration.
I mean, essentially, it's terrifying for people who live in the British Isles, because essentially they're the Republic or Northern Ireland and England and Wales and Scotland. We are essentially small countries. And when you see these left-wing politicians, either in the EU or in the British establishment, the Irish establishment, talk about the UN Migrant Pact and mass migration across continental mass migration, it is quite scary, because we live in these small countries and we're overcrowded already. Yeah. And it's frightening. These people are absolutely determined to transform this continent and the British Isles into something that's completely unrecognisable to what it is now. They're just completely determined. They want a multicultural, mass immigration future, and we'll just end up being dispossessed in our own countries. And let's be honest, I mean, the population of Wales is only 3 million. The population of the Republic, I think, is 4 million. It's not as if we have but it's not as if we have the population and the land mass to be able to accommodate mass immigration and mass multiculturalism. It's just not going to happen.
But they don't even want multicultural. They just want the Irish and whatever, the British and the Welsh, gone. They don't want the Celtic race in here. I mean, you can look at the Irish so-called Taoiseach, who doesn't even have a mandate. He didn't even get the popular vote from his own party, yet his so-called leader, for God knows why he wasn't voted in. But that's besides the point. This test for the Irish sees through, because he grew up here and he's only half Irish. So, I don't know, obviously he had a difficult time. He hates the Irish language. He hates the Irish culture. He never identified himself as Irish. He always identified himself as an Indian until he got into politics. And even there was a video caught of him 10 years ago, and he said if he gets into politics, so he planned this. He was working in the EU, and he did a stitch in Washington as well, that he would change everything about Ireland, and that is what he's doing. Absolutely. Culture, Marxism, it's completely madness, leftist. It's like brainwashing. You know, they're bringing in sexual education, gay relations into primary school, like just complete stupidity when children do not need to know. The sort of complete madness of leftists. Completely insane. Push all the way.
Absolutely. There won't be a Dublin or a Limerick or a Belfast or a Londonderry left, to be honest, if we're talking about it in an Irish context. There just won't be. I mean, when I'm in Northern Ireland, sometimes I travel down into the Republic and I go from towns such as Belfast down to Portadown, and I go down to, I've been to Newry once, and you can see they're overwhelmingly populated by the indigenous, British and Irish peoples. As soon as you go over the border of the Republic into the first town, which is Dundalk, and it's just such a transformation. As soon as you cross that border and you pull in the first town, the whole town is just populated with Africans. And I just think, what on earth has happened here? And it's just that invisible border that you can literally drive across. There's such a massive demographic and cultural difference. It really is. Yeah. And I think Dundalk is a very ancient Irish town. Yeah. And it looks more like it's part of Central Africa. I was just shocked when I went there.
Yeah, no, I was talking actually the other day on a programme, I'm talking about Dublin. As I grew up, there was like areas called Moore Street, which was Irish, traditional Irish sellers, which would sell fruit and all that. You'd go through, your big cities where they have amazing windows and, it was very Irish, and that was the Dublin I grew up in. And I was very, like when you go in now, all those streets are Africans now. They're African, all those
Absolutely.
Streets. And the government is pushing more and more that Irish people can't pass down, because it was a tradition, they'd pass down the trade license to their family. They're not going to be allowed to do that. They want a complete destruction of Ireland. They don't want any more Celtic race. They want Celtic race gone. And they're going to overflood us to make sure that that's going forward in time. They're going to push, if you don't have a certain amount of Africans.
I mean, it's pretty obvious what they're doing, and I do feel sorry for the Republic of Ireland, and I do feel sorry for some of the other British nations, because, I mean, England has a population of approximately 50 million. Yes. So there is a huge population in England. So we've got a fighting chance. But to be honest, if they manage to import 2 or 3 million migrants into Ireland, it's game over, because you've got such a small population. I think the population of the Republic is only 4 million. Yeah. Or so, roundabouts. It's not a lot when you're talking about mass migration.
No.
You could very, very quickly, within a decade or two, find yourselves a minority in Ireland. And I find that, as an Englishman, I find that shocking.
Absolutely.
And appalling.
A disgrace. But the treacherous government don't even call. They're giving Irish passports to anybody who braves in the fucking country long enough. If you're African, or if you're, Muslim, or, from Islamic countries. Now, if you're white South African or something, you might have a harder time. But if you're any, African country, you can come in, and they will argue with you and tell you that they're Irish, and you're going, you're not Irish. They're obviously not Irish. Like, they don't even know a word of Irish. They know nothing about it. Yet they'll argue you're racist then. It's like, you're not Irish. Why do you want to be Irish? You don't even understand it. Like, why would you want to?
The silencing tactics of the left is to throw all these nasty words at anyone who's brave enough to stick their head above the parapet. For example, we had a day of action in Worcester, which is an ancient historic English town in the West Country, near the Welsh border. We went to Worcester on Saturday. We ran a campaign opposing a mega mosque in the town. And the Conservative councillor who leads the city council came up and confronted us, and he called us racists. Now, obviously, we laughed, but one of our activists, who is of black Jamaican descent, came over and asked this white Conservative politician if he was a racist. And you should see the look on this Tory councillor's face was priceless. Because here is a black British First activist confronting him over his use of the word racist. It was unbelievable. And that video will be out very shortly. It's going to be hilarious. And we've got to move past. There was a saying when I was young: "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me." And that is a fact.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the nasty names is people throw at you. People are moving past that. People are getting fed up, and they're just becoming immune to all of these nasty left-wing bogey words. You can see it with Brexit. You can see it with the rise of populist, patriotic movements on the continent. Marine Le Pen, Geert Wilders, the Austrian Freedom Party, the Danish People's Party. You can see it with the rise of Trump. The grip of the political left and the fake news media is slacking, and people are starting to see through it all now. This is our time. This is our time to rise up, take back our countries, and save our homelands for future generations of our people.
Absolutely, it's unbelievable though. The media is not just fake; it's blatant lies. I used to believe that they, make up a story or maybe highlight a story or tell you things that they wanted you to hear. But I never realised they make up stories they want you to hear. And I think it's gone to a huge, whole different level of blatant lies. They've locked up this man called Ben Gilroyd. He was the Yellow Vest. He was the Yellow Vest movement in Ireland. A fantastic guy. Now, he basically has spent 10 years stopping evictions with this disgusting government throwing people, Indigenous Irish, out of their home and replacing them with migrants who literally get off, who don't speak a word, who will never work, who spend, they may have 4 women in the bloody house and none of them are going to go to work, like completely, but Irish Indigenous are not welcome in Ireland anymore. And he's spent 10 years, he's just been locked up for 3 months. No real reason. The man was just locked up, and there's apparently threats on his life now, it's just absolutely insane. They're calling him a racist, but the one thing I did love what he says, I'd rather be a racist than a traitor.
Absolutely, 100%. And at the end, last week there was a bit of a furore in the media because YouTube took down some of Britain First adverts on our channel, and it was in most of the newspapers, but the leading journalist responsible for the story and researching it was a guy in The Guardian. And The Guardian newspaper is extreme left-wing in this country, and in his article, he described Britain First as a white supremacist and anti-Islam movement. So I emailed him back and said, look, you can't in any way, shape or form describe Britain First as white supremacist. That's ludicrous. I said, before we make a complaint to IPSO, which is our Press Complaints Commission over here, we'll give you an opportunity to take it down. It's still up there, so we've had to make a complaint. But to describe Britain, this is how they do it. They falsely ascribe certain horrific labels to people who just don't deserve them. On Saturday we had a black activist out with us, and if you go onto our website, click on the racism tab, you'll see dozens and dozens of photos of people from ethnic minority backgrounds on our activities, taking part in our campaigns, etc. And there's a statement there which condemns racial hatred, etc. It's just simply not in our repertoire at all. But yet these media liars, the fake news media, these journalists who've got no morals, no principles, no decency, no honour, they keep ascribing these false labels to people, such as Britain First, and across the board. You've probably had it yourself. You've probably called some nasty names yourself.
God, yeah, all the time, completely. But, they just don't want to hear the truth. They really don't. And can't. In fairness, some people have actually come back to me and actually said, God, I never knew what you were saying. I've actually started looking into what you're saying, and I actually realise you're 100% right. Where other people who are complete leftists will always stay leftist. They don't care. They want the destruction of Ireland. They're kind of part of that whole, let's have a new Ireland, let's get rid of the whole Catholic Ireland, it's disgusting, look at all those Catholic things, it all caused problems, without even knowing the history or even understanding their own history, and that's been a problem. Especially with the millennials, have been really brainwashed into this. There's an American now company who's bringing in Educate Together, new 10 schools into Ireland, and it's real, no more Catholic schools, no more Protestant schools. You're going to have this Educate Together, but you don't go around forcing Muslims or anybody else to,
No, of course not.
educate together. It's all, get rid of Christians any way you can, like anything to do with Christianity, break it down and, dissolve it.
Of course, I mean, the political left is waging a cultural, political and economic war against Western civilization. They're not going to stop until we're completely wiped off the map. And they're using things like mass immigration and the suppression of our heritage, culture, way of life, all the traditions that hold us together, glue us together. They're going to wipe the lot of them out. It's as simple as that. Everything's going to go. Because they want to see a multicultural Europe. They want to see the indigenous, traditional nation-states of Europe dismantled, destroyed, and the great replacement of the European peoples by waves of mass immigration. They're going to push that until the bitter end. That's why Britain First exists, and I hope to see something like an Ireland First one day over there, and be more than willing to help out with our skill sets and technology that we've got behind the scenes. More than happy to help something get off the ground over there.
Absolutely.
And I hope to see it one day.
Yeah, no, me too. I really do hope. I do think Irish people are waking up. It's just been such a shock. I think that they didn't really, because it happened so quickly, where in the UK, it was over since the 40s, 50s. We've been slowly, and then it was a real push when Tony Blair got in. Where Ireland, it's been a very slow or very fast process. It was one night and they literally took them in, and it's just you wake up and then there's all this bullshit. So they're still talking about bringing in Syrian refugees when there's over 10,000, people say up to 25,000 homeless Irish. And they're still talking about Syrian refugees. There's no war on Syria. And when they come in, they're not Syrian. They're all Africans or North Africans and from Islamic countries. Where there's no war there. It's completely their benefit migrants.
The left is playing a spectacular political trick on the peoples of Europe. And that is to try and get people who are overwhelmingly and obviously economic migrants looking for a handout. And they've turned them around, recreated them as refugees to try and make us feel sorry for these people who are coming to exploit our country. It's absolutely astonishing what they're trying to pull. But most people have woken up to the lies and tricks of the left. But we need to unseat them politically using political methods, get fighting elections, getting involved in elections and starting to get British patriots elected. And I hope to see a similar type of movement over there in Ireland. I haven't seen anything organised as of yet. The one thing that I will say is that when I spend a lot of time in Belfast, and when I'm in Belfast, going through, maybe passing through Republican areas or Irish Catholic areas, I do see a lot of graffiti of a new, basically BRexit, and I just see a lot of on the walls and on lampposts, etc., posters and stuff talking about BRexit.
Because I do think Sinn Féin has really left them down. Whatever about us, we have our own kind of political idiots anyway, which have really proven to be idiots. But I think because they were very isolated Catholics up there, and I think that was their only hope, their only security was Sinn Féin. And for Sinn Féin to drop them like that was quite disgusting. And leave them, I've talked, because I've been on a few protests down here, and I've talked to a lot of Northern Irish Catholics. And they're really, it's like they were just dropped. Like, they have no idea what Sinn Féin is. And I'm like, no, it's nothing to do with nationalism anymore. It's culture Marxism. It's nothing to do with being...
It is a shame. I think a lot of Irish Catholics in Northern Ireland would come forward and support campaigns or activities of Britain First and so on. But they're in between a rock and a hard place, because the communities they live in are Sinn Féin controlled. Sinn Féin controls the provost, and it's very, very difficult for them to overcome that, and to
absolutely
they will face a lot of consequences. I've spoken to a lot of them that they're supporters, but they have to keep their head down, which is a real shame. It is a real shame, because Britain First is genuinely not sectarian. We love all the British Isles. And we want to see the traditional character of the British Isles preserved and maintained for future generations of our people. We don't want to see it destroyed or replaced by mass immigration and multiculturalism. essentially we've got a lot of ethnic minorities in Britain first, but I've spoken to them and they say, we came over here from the colonies or from the West Indies, and they came over because it was Britain, and they'd grown up in the colonies in places like Jamaica and that, where the Queen's head of state, and British culture reigned supreme in our way of life and our laws. Our armed forces were all based over there. But this latest, the migrant crisis is just on an apocalyptic scale, and it's just from cultures and areas and regions and places that are just utterly incompatible to the Western civilization that we live in.
Absolutely.
And it's all being done deliberately, and it's not being stopped. Mass immigration will continue.
Absolutely. No, they're going to keep pushing it. There was always migration. I mean, the Irish have always travelled. But the difference with it was natural. You'll always have a certain amount, and, the certain amount you'll marry, and, migration. But this mass migration with nobody allowed questioning it, no history. Like when the Irish travelled, and we did travel, particularly to America and the UK, but they would know everything about your history before you went to America. You'd have to have no criminal record. You'd have to have, a skill that they needed. And when you got there, you didn't get any money. You had to work everything out yourself. It's not like nowadays come in and getting a free house, they get a free car, they get free everything, and off the Irish taxpayers' money.
Of course. And the reason that these people, these third world migrants, come to our countries, and they get free housing, they get their food stamps, they get all sorts of perks and privileges and benefits, and that's all deliberately to try and entice them here. Don't think it's being done as a mistake. That's being done deliberately. It's a way of enticing these people from their continent all the way over to ours by giving them such generous benefits, and that's soft touch Britain. That's a term used by the British media, and pretty sure it's the same all across Europe. They call it generous Germany, soft touch Britain. It's just that's their way of enticing millions of these third world migrants over to our countries.
Absolutely, but it is very sad about Northern Ireland, particularly for the Catholics. I do feel that they are lost, so that they don't really know enough, because they've been separated for so long, and Sinn Féin was their kind of, they believed that Sinn Féin was for a republic. None of them still do, God love them. They really do think, and it's like when you talk to them, it's like, no, they're not. They're not for 32. 32 maybe, but for under the EU, what difference does it make? You'd be better off with the British. We'd all be better off with the British. I mean,
what difference does it make if you're ruled by Brussels? What difference does it make? Northern Ireland's part of the United Kingdom. It makes any difference whatsoever.
Exactly.
It's the same with the SNP in Scotland. They're always banging the drum about independence. They want to regain their sovereignty from Westminster, and then they want to hand it over to Brussels. That just does not make sense.
Absolutely. No, and I argue this and I explain this to people, particularly in the South. I'm like, what was the point? We had 800 years of fighting the British. There was so much death over that amount of time, so much killing, so much whatever. And yet, realistically, we're still historically linked with the British. We would have been better off staying with the British. We have left the EU, take our country, without even one bullet. Without one bullet.
If you think about it, at the moment, at this present time, the vast majority of the Irish economy is geared towards trade with Britain, not with the EU, but with Britain. And Ireland would be far smarter coming out of the EU.
Absolutely, if we have a real government.
And enjoying all the perks of economic ties with Britain and with the new wave of trade that's going to come with Brexit. It's far better and more sensible to do that rather than staying in an EU where recently Germany has been now officially in recession. France has been in an economic emergency for years on end. Italy and Spain and Portugal and Greece are all effectively bankrupt. So what is the point of staying in a bankrupt, failing economic union in Europe?
It makes absolutely no sense. You're totally correct. And even when I say this to people, I say, we will go bust. Even when, Brexit was happening, the Irish government was going on with bullshit, saying, we're going to benefit so well, and, we're going to get all these jobs, England's crazy and all this. It's like, no, it's not. England is going to be, or Britain is going to be fine. We are going to pay for this. If we had a real government, they would have made a deal with the United Kingdom to say we only joined in anyway in 1975 to trade with Britain. That was the only reason why Ireland joined the EEC at the time. Not for any other reason, because we weren't doing any trade. They needed to survive through the British because we're historically linked. Britain has always grown the products in Ireland. We've always sold them food and whatever. And that's been a link. But without that link, we will go bust in the morning. And we don't have any friends, and the Irish people don't understand that. As much as they love to hate or they love to argue with the British, they're still really our link. It's almost, we're still linked with you guys. So even when we went bust, it was a
ludicrous situation. It is a very, very ludicrous situation where you've got a British patriot politician such as myself. He actually cherishes Irish independence to a greater degree than people who supposedly have fought for it their whole lives. People like Jerry Adams and so on. It's just ludicrous. Or Martina, the one from the Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland. And it's just ludicrous. They essentially, they want to surrender Irish sovereignty to the federal superstate in Brussels. And that's it. Once it's gone, you'll never get it back.
No. It just shows you they've all been paid off by Soros. None of them are real. They're not for Ireland. They're complete liars. All the ones
I want to see an Irish Republic, and I'd like to think that most of your viewership and the people who can be listening to this are in Ireland, the Republic. I want to see, Britain First wants to see an Irish Republic that is traditionally and historically Irish in character, and that is preserved. And I want to see a sovereign nation with a sovereign government based in Dublin. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah, and that's what I'd like to see. But you see, the problem is a lot of Irish people still think they're independent and sovereign, even though they're in the EU. And it's kind of hard for them, like I've pinpointed it out to them, that you're not independent and sovereignty. We've given up everything. Our government has signed away everything that our forefathers died and fought for to create.
Well, it's ludicrous because the government in Dublin is not sovereign any longer because it can't go around the world and make a trade deal.
No.
It can't. It's got literally no say in legislation that comes from the EU. So how legislation from the European Union takes precedent over native Irish legislation. So how in any way, shape or form can you say that Ireland is independent? It's ludicrous.
No, it's not. I mean, but the government doesn't even hide it. You have Micheál Martin who turned around and said, we're not looking back on sovereignty in the backwards. Backwards sovereignty? What, 800 years of a war? We would have been better off staying with Britain. What was the point of everybody dying and being killed for? What was the point of all that war? Because we've got more in common with you guys than we do with majority of European. Like, I love Europe, it's a lovely continent, but we don't trade with them. We've very little historic links. And in reality, they're not really our allies, as much as Britain and ourselves would have argued. The reality was, if we got attacked, it would have been probably England who would have attacked us. It wasn't Europe. And if they went into war, it was the Irish who left to go to war with the British in the Second World War. There was a Royal Irish Army. There was 200,000 that left to go. So in reality, we are still linked, as much as people don't want to acknowledge that. We're not linked to Europe. There is no historic link. If when we go bust, and we will go bust after Brexit, they won't be travelling to France and Germany. They don't speak most of their languages. They have very little in common. They will be going back to the same places they always gone, back to England.
I just find it sickening, I really do. I find it sickening. That, like you say, 800 years of struggle to establish a sovereign Irish nation, and your treacherous politicians have handed it over on a plate to a federal political superstate with its own army, its own anthem, its own flag in Brussels. I mean, I just find it sickening. There's a betrayal.
Absolutely, it's heart-wrenching. Like, to think of all the amount of people who've died over 800 years for sovereign independence, and it's to be handed over without a bullet, without all these secret handshakes. Absolutely, it turns my stomach. Like, it is such a disgusting betrayal of our people and our history. And
we have to say, obviously every November that those millions of our soldiers and civilians who died in the war and the war for that, to maintain Britain as a sovereign nation and sovereignty is handed on a plate to unelected bureaucrats in Brussels running a political soup state. So, there is a monster even all across Europe. Some countries are more enthusiastic, but millions of French have died for France. Millions of Germans have died for Germany. And all across Europe, there's been massive sacrifice to maintain sovereignty and freedom and the future of all the nation states of Europe. So I'm glad to see the fight. It really is. And the potatoes media are up in the ante and they're more aggressive, more abusive. But that is in response to a rising tide of people waking up all across the West. You see it in Australia, you see it with Trump, BRexit, you see it with Marine Le Pen in France, you see it with a backlash against the EU. It's just all across the Western world, people are waking up on a grand scale. And that's historical. It's not going to be stopped by a bunch of labels and nasty names. It is an historical event, what's happening, an awakening to Western peoples, and it will carry on until we've taken our countries back from the corrupt political left.
Please God. And all of them be bloody hung. It's absolutely a disgrace. I mean, even when I explain, there's cannons all over Dublin from hundreds of centuries of ancestors fighting off to protect these people, protect the Irish indigenous race. And it's like you're all welcoming them in. Why do you think they had cannons all over Dublin? It wasn't for, the view or, for the sight of it or, the beautiful sculpture. It was to protect us indigenous Irish from attacking forces from wherever in the world. And there's cannons all over. But now it's like, oh, welcome in. It's absolutely insane. It's just crazy. It just turns my stomach. The whole treacherous government is. And the worst thing is we voted twice out and were made vote.
Of course, they make you to vote again and again and again, and that's why on the mainland they want the second referendum, and if they lose that, they probably want a third referendum, and what has happened is an undemocratic attempt to completely unravel and abolish European nation states as they are. And I haven't got that many contacts in Ireland, apart from yourself and a few others. So if there are people listening to this broadcast, this show, and they want to get in touch with Britain First or myself, and they want to discuss ways that Britain First can help get an organisation off the ground in Ireland, I'm more than willing to spend a lot of time and effort to help get an organisation off the ground in Ireland, because I think it's very important.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Paul. I'm sure you will get some contacts after this. Definitely.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, because I do think there's something that needs to be done, although unfortunately, because the Irish media has really wrapped up Brexit and Britain First and everything as racist and typical British sort of thing, because the Irish government is such a globalist. They really are for the destruction of Ireland.
Absolutely. And they won't stop until the Irish people are a minority in Ireland. And then all the sacrifice over 800 years would have been completely in vain. I mean, what was the point? So there's a betrayal of your people and all the people who died for your country happening right now. And it's time for Irish people to wake up and take their country back.
Yeah.
So it's been an absolute pleasure being on the show again.
Thank you so much, Paul.
I hope to hear from Patriots over there in the Republic of Ireland.
I'm sure
I'm at your disposal anytime, anywhere. To get in contact, and let's get an organisation, let's get a movement in Ireland established so that we can we can help to take that country back for its people.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be in contact with you with some information, and we might try and get up to Northern Ireland to meet you at some stage. So it was brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the show again, and I'll be in touch.
You're welcome.
With the numbers. All right.
Thank you. Have a good day. God bless.
Have a good day. Thank you very much. Bye. God bless. Bye.
You are listening to Irish News Radio and irishnews.net. Email news@irishnews.net.